Kat Shoulders has been someone who I've been meaning to host for quite some time. I'm so happy we finally recorded, and as someone I've loved seeing at events, it was so nice to have a discussion away from crowds. We chat about her go-to camera gear in various situations, how you can get the Leica look for less. We reflect on her podcast 10 and 2, which of course gets us into her watch journey. We even chat about some interior design and what car she may just be getting for her next camping adventure. Please enjoy my conversation with Kat. I'm your host, Wesley Smith, and you're listening to the Standard Age Podcast. I imagine most people are familiar with you either through your podcast or certainly your photos. Do you remember the first time you ever picked up a camera?
First time I ever picked up a camera. I mean, probably as a kid at some point, I had one of those Polaroid printout cameras that I shamelessly will admit was probably like Spice Girls themed at the time.
Amazing.
I think that might have been like my first ever camera, but seriously, picking up a camera was actually during COVID. So, we had the podcast 10 and 2, which was great and going kind of full steam. And all the brands were sending us watches, and I thought I should probably learn to like take a decent photo of these watches. So I did a lot of research, of course, bought a Sony like A6400 little APS-C camera, and had a buddy of mine here in Nashville like sit down and show me the basics of how to shoot a photo, learning aperture and exposure and shutter speed, and
No
really
way.
just took off from there. And I did nothing every day because I was furloughed for my like day job during COVID. So 4 months, nothing but recording podcasts and shooting watches every day, just as much as I possibly could. So I'm a student of YouTube University, I call it. And like I just self-taught. Yeah, I just sat there and watched as many videos as I could, and taught myself how to shoot watches.
Wow. So holy shit. My brain has 7 questions in it right now. Okay, first of all, what was your job that you got furloughed from? Second, when you picked up your camera and basically immersed yourself in what I imagine felt like a fun hobby, but quickly became, did it ever feel like work? And I just asked you, I think,
No,
3
and it still
questions.
doesn't. It still
Okay,
doesn't.
yeah,
I
for
was just
sure.
on a shoot a couple days ago here, and I'm really lucky that I get to do this for my day-to-day job. It's pretty crazy. I have to pinch myself a lot. But to answer your first question, I was in physical therapy before I was ever in the world of watches. So came from
Cool.
healthcare, and as you know, was greatly hit and affected by COVID. And
Hmm.
a lot of us therapists, we lost our jobs. I was in outpatient ortho, so all of my patients were all elective surgeries. So they just stopped it. No one was having hip replacements and shoulder replacements. So I was at home chilling for 3 or 4 months. And like I said, I picked up the camera and did nothing else but just kind of self-taught, and honestly had a lot of great resources and photographers like Zach Pena, who was able to get on DMs and answer questions and help guide me, and still someone I look up to today. I think he's one of the best photographers out there. He's just crazy good. And
Sure.
looking at even people that you follow and work with, like Brett Curry, who's amazing too, and just really watching how do they utilize light and subject, and yeah, just trying to emulate what they were doing in my own way, and sort of
Mhm.
finding my own creative style through doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, that's crazy. So
Very crazy.
I mean, okay, so obviously, much like watches, camera gear can be a crazy deep dive. And I know you've shot like a lot of different brands. Do you have a favorite brand of camera?
I mean, it's tough because like watches, you can't ever have enough. And there's different tools for different situations.
Mm-hmm.
I've shot everything from like APS-C going to full frame. I've even shot like Fuji medium format, which is really cool. Um, and something I like to dive into a little bit more in the future. But
Medium format.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
I haven't shot it ever.
Yeah, it's slow. It slows you down like crazy, but when you are in the editing room and you're looking at those photos, it is insane. The amount of zoom you can zoom in and the detail that's kept in those photos is just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think probably too much,
Mm.
but really cool. It's tough. I'm such a Canon fan. I love my Canon R5. It's my workhorse. It's what I've been shooting on probably the last 3 or 4 years. Was brought into the Canon world by Liam O'Donnell, who used to shoot at Watchanisa. Now he's over with Grand Seiko. But I was Sony for a long time and then moved over, and Canon's colors, skin tones are just really great in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Very natural looking. But that being said, I did get into the Leica world like a couple of years ago,
Sure.
and have dove into like the Leica Q. Now I have the Leica SL2 that I love.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something pretty magical about shooting Leica, and I'm sure you can agree. You shoot with Leica too, and there's just that micro contrast you get out of those images, and it's a lot slower. I'm not gonna lie, like nowhere near the autofocus that I have on
Mm.
the Canon by far. I can almost shoot blindly with the Canon, right? I just know I'm going to nail the image. The software that they use is incredible for autofocus, whether you're on a person or a car, motorcycle, whatever. Um, so it just depends on what I'm shooting. If I know I'm going to have time and I don't have to rush through, I'm not trying to grasp something in a millisecond.
Mm-hmm.
I will bring the Leica for those shoots, and I'm always wowed by the results that I get shooting with the SL system.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so impressive, and I think the colors are just, oh man, they're just incredible that you
Yeah.
get out of Leica.
Yeah, for sure. And and I've been on this monochrome kick. So like it's not even color. Like it's just I've just
Do
been
you have
looking
a
at
monochrome?
I do. Yeah. I just got an M10 monochrome from Camera West, Sean and all those guys.
Yeah.
I bought it, I don't know, 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago. And I got it with a 50 millimeter Summilux from 1960. And so it's like old, you kind of never know what you're going to get. Like some images look like it was taken with a modern lens, and some just like look super dreamy and old, and
That's
like
great.
it's really cool. And then
So
I got
what made you go monochrome, if I can ask?
so I've talked a little bit about it on the pod already, but I don't expect you to have heard it. But I'm just apologizing to the audience for the 4 people who listen to every episode. Um, I shot almost exclusively in black and white as a teenager, with my dad's Canon AE1 from the 80s, and I just like really missed that. But a major contributing factor too was um, I hope to be a father at some point in the near future, and I really wanted to kind of capture the life of our kid in black and white. And
That's so great.
and could I have used my Q2 and converted the images? Sure, but it is different.
It is.
With like the color sensor and the level of contrast and sort of dynamic range of a monochrome is like crazy. So,
Yeah.
and they really, really nailed it with the M10. The M11's great too, but I don't know. The M10's pretty magical. And then I got a 35 millimeter lens as well. Having shot with 50, I took that. I went on a trip with my wife. We go with the same 2 couples every year to Cabo, and just sitting around the dinner table, just taking candids was really difficult with a 50.
Yeah.
Because I was, you're
So
close
close.
proximity. Yeah. And as a result, I was just like, I need a wider lens. And 35 is what I shot as a kid anyway. And I find that I crop to 35 or 50 in the camera when I shoot Q2 a lot. Um, and I've also found that like the 50 mil is the best for shooting cars, honestly. But but the 35 is crazy, crazy good. I got the Summicron Apo, which is like
Oh, that's the lens.
which
Yeah.
is like stupid scientifically, what do they call it? Clinically sharp, I think is
Yeah.
what they say. Which is kind of exhausting to think about, but Yeah, it's an insane lens. Like
That's awesome.
it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm always interested to hear people's perspective when they go full monochrome because
Hmm.
I'm a person, I love color. I think it brings so much life into an image. But that being said, there's a lot of magic in black and white. And I have a lot of photo books on the shelf behind me that are black and white images, and they just wow you with the play of
Hmm.
light and shadows. And I've even like sort of challenged myself in the past with turning on like color profile black and white so
Hmm.
that the image that I'm taking look black and white. And of course, they're raw, so you still have the color you can change later. But
Sure.
it's different just looking through the lens in a black and white, and
Yeah.
you see the world differently that way, and it's really cool. So I
You
commend you for going all out and going monochrome.
Yeah, thanks. And you're totally right. I mean, I now it's so funny how it's like I could put one camera around my neck and it's like I'm literally seeing the world in color or black and white. It'll totally change your perspective. Now, historically, I have taken color photos knowing that I would convert it to black and white.
Yeah,
Um, but now it's just like my bar has been raised for okay, so I'll just cut to the chase. Basically, basically my grading scale, right, for a good black and white image is not just a black and white image because really it's just degrees of gray.
yeah,
I really do think the best black and white images are the scale from white, like the whitest white to the darkest of black. And if you have both of those in your image, my personal opinion, those are the best black and white photos because you know there's contrast, heavy, heavy contrast. And now it's like historically I would have taken XYZ photo, but now that I'm like challenging myself to get that kind of contrast, I'm taking fewer photos as a result because my not expectation, it's not that's not the right word. My goal has changed, I guess. I've moved the markers, you know.
yeah. Well, and you're already kind of slowing down with just using the M system alone, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And I love that experience. I've had an M10 in the past, and probably my biggest regret in selling a camera was my M10.
Mm.
Want to get back into the M system because there is something so magical about shooting, manual focus and just that camera in general. Like you mentioned, you went back to the M10, even though there is the M11 now. I think
Hmm.
that camera is just so good, and some of my favorite shots I've ever taken ever were on that camera.
Yeah, and make no mistake, a lot of that's due to affordability. The M10
Yeah,
is cheaper than the M11, so let's be clear.
you can get a
Um,
great deal.
yeah, and so you mentioned color earlier. I now when I shoot color, it's almost like a mood thing. Whereas like I love my Q2 still. And I've said this before, it's like if I'm going to a city I've never been to, I'm going to Toronto next week. So never been there before, only taken the Q2. Now, if I go back, it's like I like to rediscover these places in black and white. So
That's
it's like,
cool. I love that.
so like in October when I go to New York for the, I don't know, 100th time, I'm only taking my monochrome because I've shot in color so much there. And I think your point about there's like an emotion with color too. It's like, it's almost like those are happier photos and not that black and white are not happy, but I feel like they pull on my personal heartstrings a little more. It's like a little more
Yeah,
emotive.
totally.
Um, and I don't know if that's the disgusting word of artsy, effect,
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
think there's less distraction, right? You can really set the mood with a black and white photograph. And
totally.
something I've wanted to do for a long time, and you just got to find the right brand to come on board. But I'd love to do a watch shoot with maybe a monochrome, looking watch, monochromatic in tone or whatever. But it's hard to get a watch brand to agree to a black and white photo shoot because they're like, yeah, no, we want color photographs. But I think that would be so cool to do a black and white photo shoot.
It Well, it's funny you say that because I've started to shoot watches in black and white just recently. And with that Apo lens, it's like crazy good. And I mean, with that lens too, you get such close proximity as well. I mean, it's not macro, of course, but it is damn close to it considering what a 35 would otherwise give you. But anyway, do you have a go-to camera for vacations or setup?
Um, I think that's when I would really like to bring the Leica for sure, because then I
Mm.
can really play around with it. I've got all the time in the world. I feel like, sadly, I feel like the Canon, it just, when I pick it up, I feel like I'm working in a way, just
Okay.
because it is sort of the work camera for me.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've got the Leica. I've also got a Panasonic S5, the Lumix S5 too, and that's a really great camera. Like a sensor in that, so you get a lot of those same really nice colors. Took that to California a few years ago and just was blown away by the images I got from it too.
Cool.
And for those listening, like a great, if you're looking for those Leica colors and even a little bit of that contrast, you can get it in a much cheaper format through something like the Lumix, because I
Mm.
think it's so close when I have those file sizes. And now, honestly, I've started shooting side by side, so I'll carry both of those on set with me. I'll have the S5 II. I'm sorry, I get all these cameras confused. The SL2 from Leica, and then I'll have the S5 II from Panasonic on the other side. And then you got like your 70 to 200 over here, your 50 mil, and you can kind of shoot simultaneously.
Hmm.
And I think the files came out really, really similar in nature. And I don't think anyone from maybe like a photographer's eye is going to be able to tell the difference.
Sure. Yeah. 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 What was your last vacation?
Oh boy. Yeah, this is so sad. My last vacation, we just stayed home. I took a week off a couple months ago, and we honestly we bought a new house last year,
Oh,
and you know this
congrats.
too, going through house projects and stuff like that. We just hadn't had a lot of time to work on some of those projects, so we stayed home for a week and knocked out a bunch of like landscaping things I it sounds like work, but I get enjoyment doing. I love it's very therapeutic for me to be out in the yard and working on things in the house. So yeah, we just we had a little staycation here, and that was the last vacay, but it was a lot of fun because we were really anxious to kind of put our finger on a lot of these little home projects that we hadn't had time to do.
Yeah, I'm in the throes of all of that.
I know you are.
My house looks like it's sitting on Mars currently. I have dirt around, well, the entire house. There's dirt everywhere. I'm actually looking out a window now. Had a bunch of concrete busted up. It's
Oh,
been a whole
geez.
thing. Okay, so what is your style of home? What kind of house are you guys in?
So we're in a very traditional style home here. My husband and me, we've bought a couple houses now that we've done fixing up to. We've bought projects, knowing that we were sort of going to flip the house at some point, and those were maybe turning a kind of a 70s home, mid-century vibe, a little bit farmhouse, a little bit mid-century. But this house that we moved into, it's quite the opposite of our taste, to be honest. But we
Mm.
fell in love with the landscaping. The previous owners were landscapers, and so they did a phenomenal job. We have an amazing yard. It is an oasis in the back.
Wow.
It's such a peaceful place. And but yeah, it's traditional in nature, just kind of a red brick home. A lot of great like I guess woodworking around the trim and stuff, some
Mhm.
intricate details, but yeah, it's a very hard house to decorate. I'll be honest. We're contemplating right now hiring an interior designer just because I am just like at a loss of like where do we go? How do we design um this type of house? Because we're not really used to it. So if you're listening and you're an interior designer somewhere in the Nashville, Kentucky, Tennessee, Atlanta area, reach out to me.
Well, shoot me photos because I want to see it, and if I can send you like inspo pics that come to mind from my again peon brain, I'd be happy to help in any way I
Yeah,
could.
I'll be honest. I think the style I'd love to go into is sort of this,
Yeah.
French farmhouse style. I
Yep.
think would work really well in this house. But yeah, I'll send pics your way so you can give me some inspo ideas.
Here's a suggestion. You should get Ellen DeGeneres's architecture book. You know, she's
I
like,
didn't know she had an architecture book. No way.
well, I mean, it's like an interior book. Like her real estate game is like,
I had no
she's,
idea.
oh my God, Ellen DeGeneres. She's probably made more money in real estate than she did on television.
It's crazy.
If I had to guess, yeah, like she's bought and sold houses. Like Adam Levine bought her place. She bought it back from him. Like she has like an $80 million house in Montecito or something. Like
I'll have
or
to,
like
yeah, I had no
forty
idea
million
on that.
dollars or something. Like her real estate, like legitimately, she granted she works with interior designers, whatever. When we get off, I have her book, and I'll because I love and I like if I didn't do this, with clothing,
Yeah.
I've thought about being an interior designer. Like I
You've
love
got a great eye.
architecture.
Yeah, you do. You have a great eye for it
Well,
too.
that's kind of you. Thank you. It's but again, it doesn't feel like work. It's that whole like I love doing this kind of thing, and um, like I kind of gut renovated our whole house and did it. And now I'm working on the outside, and the front stairs will be interesting.
That's awesome.
I'm excited.
What's your like when you're renovating inside versus outdoor, like what's your favorite? Do you prefer doing more landscape stuff or do you like doing the
No,
interior?
inside. Yeah, inside.
Yeah.
Because I like stuff. You know what I mean? Like I love shelves. I love decorative things. I like color. I like, layout. I like to design layout. Now you could do that same thing with landscaping, but it's just like you're dealing with like elevation changes and soil, and I am not a green thumb, so like I will kill something real quick. So yeah, it's one of those things. Now, I have sort of designed the exterior as well, but again, a
Yeah.
lot of it's just Google search, and images and
And
books. And
what's been your biggest inspiration for your house redesign?
well, because I have a variance of taste and we're planning on staying here for a long time. Like our previous place we bought as a future rental, so it's now a rental. So I didn't put the kind of effort into that place as I am here.
Yeah.
Um, I live on a pie shaped lot, which is kind of cool because the orientation of the home on the land creates this sort of like compartmentalized sections of outdoor space. So,
Oh,
like
okay.
behind me here is the pool. On that side of the house, it feels like a total, like it doesn't even feel like the same yard kind of thing. And then the front, and we're going to put up a fence slash gate to sort of again create the separation of spaces. And so the front of the house is going to be more like Japanese Zen garden, so that when you come home you feel a little bit more Zen. On the
Yeah.
side of the house it's going to feel like Tuscany, and then eventually out by the pool it'll feel like Palm Springs.
Oh, awesome.
But you can't see each space from the other.
Yeah.
So even though it sounds like a crazy thing to do, because of there's no like consistency, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
You don't really need the consistency anyway because you can't see it, right? So it's not like you painted a purple wall into a red wall, like
Totally.
don't do that, by the way. um,
If
I mean, you can. You
you want,
can.
yeah,
That'd be an interesting Leica photo. Um,
definitely.
are you from Tennessee originally?
I am. Yeah, born and raised in Nashville. There's not many of us
Yeah.
around that were born and raised here. It's become an implant city for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, I love it here. I moved to Phoenix right after high school to live with my dad out there for a little while. And I didn't last even a year in the desert. It was not for me. Beautiful, absolutely stunning. I've never seen better sunsets in my life than I saw when I lived in Phoenix. But
Right.
I love greenery. I love trees, and we're close to the mountains. We're a couple hours away from the Smoky Mountains,
Hmm.
a couple hours away from North Carolina. We're several hours away from the beach, so it's a pretty like great location to be in. I'm only an hour and a half flight from New York, which is great. I go there lots for work, obviously, but yeah, it's a nice little central spot for sure.
Yeah, that's great. What did your parents do when you were a kid?
My mom is a nurse, still is a nurse. And my dad did various things. He worked for a medical waste company for years and years that he pretty much retired from
Mm.
here in Nashville and then both in Phoenix too. But yeah, sort of odd end jobs. My parents divorced early on, so my dad ended up moving to Phoenix when I was about 13. Um, and then yeah, I did a lot of trips out there, a lot of trips to Colorado. We had family out there, but
Cool.
always sort of had my feet planted here in Nashville.
Yeah. Do you have siblings?
I do. Yeah, I've got a brother. I got actually two brothers, older brother, younger brother, and then a younger sister who just started college for the first time. So she is 19 and doing her own thing. And she lives in Phoenix now with my younger brother. But
Oh,
yeah, it's
wow.
crazy to have a younger sibling that's just now starting her sort of life journey, which is really cool.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Where'd you go to school?
I went to school here locally in Tennessee, so just a community college that's pretty close by.
Okay.
But I did a little bit of college when I was in Phoenix, and again, just didn't pan out for me, so I ended up coming back here.
Got it. So what got you into like physical therapy then?
I think years of probably growing up watching my mom help people was
Hmm.
was probably played a huge part.
Yeah.
It was so rewarding to be in PT.
Hmm.
Loved helping people get better. And I will say I had a really good part of that industry of working with outpatient and ortho patients because they want to get better. And
Yeah.
so I did inpatient for a little while, and that was really tough because you're begging and pleading for patients to get out of bed that they don't really care. They don't want to get better. It's it's sort of just a begging game at that point. And I didn't really enjoy that. But then going into the ortho world, yeah, it was a lot of fun. You're seeing patients that are having these elective surgeries and they want to get healthier and better. Also saw a lot of kids, a lot of sports injuries and stuff like that, which was fun to
Yeah.
rehab them from. But yeah, it's a place in my life I miss thinking back. I do miss it quite a bit. It again, it's so rewarding. I don't think I get that level of reward in what I do now, even though I love my job. I wouldn't replace it for anything.
Sure, sure.
Helping people get better is just something really special that you can do.
Yeah.
And I have all the respect in the world for medical staff and people that are working in hospitals and stuff like that. My mom still does. And she's still doing her thing, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I was kind of curious too, like how you got into watches because physical therapy is like I don't know, like I used to be in orthopedic sales actually, like
Oh, really?
before a
Okay.
long time ago, like 20 years ago.
You sell
And
braces and stuff like that?
I did post-op knee bracing, mostly in conjunction with Don Joy Orthopedics, which ironically is like 3 miles from my house now,
That's great.
which is funny. But so I'm kind of curious, like what got you into watches in general?
Yeah, so I mean since I was a kid, I was always into gadgets and things, right? So cameras and pens and watches too. Super jealous of my brothers who got G-Shocks when I was a kid, and I remember my mom bought me this rainbow dialed Timex, which thinking back now, I wish I totally had and was probably very cool. But I was so mad. I wanted the digital watch. I wanted what they had, and yeah, so it kind of started at an early age, and then I tell you, it was like several years after me and my husband were married. I thought Valentine's Day was coming up, and I was like, I really want a set of watches for us, like a his and her set. And
Cool.
down the rabbit hole I went. Started diving into like Watch You Seek into the forums because a lot of the watches I was finding that were his and her, I didn't like the her option. It was like the
Okay.
the watches were so tiny and small, and they weren't for me. And so um ended up settling on Seiko's, which was what I ended up buying. He got like a Seiko SNK field watch, and I got the SKX 013, which is the mid-size version that Seiko does, and actually discontinued, obviously now. But
Yeah.
um, that was the rabbit hole, and those were both mechanical watches. I'd never had a mechanical watch before, and that was it. And I just started researching more about these watches and movements, and immediately buying the next, and kind of starting that trajectory of starting your collection. Going to the Hamilton and then going to a Tissot and then going to Omega and then just kind of building it out from there. But yeah, it started by just me wanting to buy some gifts for Valentine's Day, and then that was the bug that bit me, and then that was it. Yeah.
Wow. What year was that?
This was probably 2016, 2017, I would
Okay.
say. Yeah, around
What
then.
so the SKX 013, what bezel color is that?
Black. It's just the
Yes.
black and white. Yeah, the
Okay.
black and white. Looks just like the 007, but just smaller.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think I had the 009. Is that the Pepsi version one?
That's the Pepsi. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
one's
that's
really
the
cool
one I
too.
had. I like that one. I ended up getting rid of it and I kind of regret it, but oh well. So uh, tell me about the origin story behind 10 and 2.
Yeah. So, I had been in watches for a couple years, just researching. I was on all the Facebook groups that you can imagine, Watch You
Hmm.
Seek too. Um, and my immediate thought was like, there's not enough women in this hobby. And so
Sure.
I thought, well, why don't I start a podcast or why don't I start a YouTube channel? And I started floating around the idea. I recorded a video, which I hope is deleted and never lives out there, but it was so bad. And I was like, I can't do this alone. I don't want to just talk to a camera. I hate it. I hate just talking by myself. And so I thought, let me try to do a podcast, but I need to like find a co-host. And so it would be really great if there was another girl I could do it with. If
Hmm.
not, I have a plenty of guy friends that I'm sure someone could jump on, but I think it would be really cool to do this with another female.
Sure.
And at the time, it was kind of funny because I would get a lot of questions on Watch You Seek from people asking me about Omega watches in Nashville. And I was like,
Hmm.
that's strange. I don't know much about Omega. And what had happened was Catlin worked at Omega at the time, and she was here, and she also went by Cat to a lot of people. So people were just confusing us with each other. And
Oh, I see.
yeah, and so they were asking me all these Omega questions, and I was like, what the heck? What do I know about Omega? Like, I don't work there.
I got a SKX. I don't know what you're talking about.
And they come to find out Catlin's, working at the retail space here in Nashville, and obviously is the encyclopedia on Omega watches at the time. And I went to a watch meetup to meet her, and of course, we were like the only two females there at the time.
Sure.
We got along right off the bat. I asked her for coffee the next day and basically just spilled out the plan. I was like, look, I want to start this podcast. I think you're really great. I think we should do this together. And she was totally down. And we immediately started. That was, I think, 2019, in the summer of 2019 when we started the podcast. Um, and then it really took off. And I think we landed at just the right time before there was probably an influx of all the podcasts there are now. And
Yeah.
again, there just really wasn't a ton of, women on the scene at the time. And now you have a lot of great females in the space, which I love, and I hope to see more. But
Sure.
but yeah, we really looked out and it took off. And during COVID, again, because we were home doing nothing but recording, we were able to hop on the line with all of the watch brand CEOs that were also home doing nothing, and we started landing partnerships and sponsorships for the pod, which is great. And just really took off, and then our network just continued to grow, and yeah, and then I ended up at Watchanisa not long after that, and
Mhm.
worked with Josh Shanks for a bit over there, and Liam and Viviana, who was there also at the time, it was a great crew. And spent a little bit of time there before coming over to Worn and Wound.
Oh, amazing. Well, do you mind sharing some kind of statistics about 10 and 2?
Yeah, sure. If I can remember.
Yeah. So how many episodes did you do?
Oh my gosh, that you're hitting me hard.
Oh,
I have to,
no, just an estimate. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I mean, we probably did, we did over 100, maybe 200 something
Okay.
episodes, I would say. Yeah.
Because you started in 2019, and when was the last one? Ish.
The last one was 2022, I think was our
Okay,
last
so you
episode.
did it for 3 years. So call it 150 episodes if you do it
Yeah, maybe
weekly.
something around there. Yeah.
Okay, or 200. Cool.
Yeah.
What was like your average listen after a year, would you gather?
Like download numbers.
Yeah, like how many people heard each episode, would you say?
Oh man, it's hard to say. It's been so long since I've looked at those stats. I mean, I would say,
I'll tell you why I'm asking, but go
yeah,
ahead.
well, I would say we had somewhere between like 10, 15,000 usually an episode.
Per episode.
Time, yeah, when we were recording, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the last I remember.
Okay, so
Why,
what?
what?
Well, I'm just kind of curious because I've never sought out like a brand partnership before, and I don't know what they would expect. Not that I'm looking for it, but like, I don't know. I've just never really thought about it because I get asked all the time, Does your podcast make you any money? Like that is like,
It didn't, I'll be honest. Yeah, if I could share one thing, it is for those that are like maybe thinking about getting those partnership deals. You have to get a lot of them for it to make sense.
right.
And I'll be honest, by the time we paid taxes on stuff, we didn't make hardly anything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, we just didn't
Yeah.
because what ended up happening is we started LLC with 10 and 2 to do these partnership deals, and you get taxed on the LLC and then you also get taxed on your personal. So it we didn't make enough for it to like really kind of make sense. And I think
Right.
for those that are doing it, don't do it for money. Do it because you like to do it and you like to record and
Sure.
all that stuff. But it it's not a big money game. And analytics on podcasts, as you know, it's pretty hard. We would love to know like what percentage of our listeners were female versus male. It's not out there. They don't have those
Sure.
analytics. They're not there. It's not like YouTube where you can really define kind of
Hmm.
who's listening based on profiles. So um yeah, it's a hard game to try to catch. But we never did it for the money. It was just kind of a great little bonus to have a couple partnerships rolling in.
Yeah.
And I think the brands that worked with us maybe weren't as concerned with the numbers as much as like the audience itself,
Right.
and
Right.
and having that sort of niche kind of group of people that were listening. But yeah, I definitely would not recommend people to get into podcasting for money because I don't think it's there.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. Okay, so there's a couple things there. So do you feel like when you guys created the brand partnerships, did you see a spike in listens? Like were they promoting your podcast as much as you were promoting their product?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes if say a partner reposted our podcast on their socials, right?
Right.
We get us a little spike
Yeah.
during those moments where people were, maybe didn't know about us, were listening or downloading it for the first time. So
Hmm.
that was always nice to see. And then honestly, the biggest growth that we ever had was just getting kind of cool people on the podcast. That
Yeah.
that was the biggest sort of factor. And so talking to people from different brands or just different photographers that were out there, all these special guests that we had on at the time, those we would see kind of a spike in downloads and listens and just new listeners in general during those moments. But yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely helped for sure when brands would reshare on their platform for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I started this podcast, I believe July of 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And
Dude, it started around the same time. We were
well,
July
so
2019 too.
so here's the thing is like I'm satisfied with my listenership. I don't get 15,000 listens per episode though. And I have been on the same plateau almost since like the end of year 1. Like I have not grown like this isn't me complaining. This is
Yeah.
me just like almost being more perplexed as to like how this has just been flatlined for 4 years. Like I just don't get it.
Yeah,
But
I'd
I don't know.
almost under because I feel like when we first started, we had a huge growth right off the bat, and then it
Okay.
did it did start to plateau over like the last kind of year that we were doing it. Um, I wonder if podcasts are still is it still a thing? I mean, there's new podcasts, popping up every day, and I
Hmm.
still listen to other podcasts. Um, but I just wonder too if just the platform itself is like a stream, is it still as big as it used to be? I don't know. That's sort of the question I kind of have in the back of my head because I think even on Worn and Wound we've noticed too, like we've not really grown a ton, maybe say in the last year. We've
Yeah.
not declined, but it's just sort of again this plateau.
Right.
And so maybe we're just maxing out the watch community. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said there. But on the same note, like I kind of feel like there's here's the good news. When I first started it, the workload was like really high. And now it's just become less and less and less because I've gotten so much more efficient at editing. I'm better in the moment editing myself.
Yeah.
Um, since you're recording locally, this will be even easier to edit. Um, so it's that's part of the reason I continue to do it. The other part is I get so many, well, enough messages, like so many. I get plenty of messages that tell me that they love the show to keep it going. And because trust me, it does take time.
No, it did.
And time is
Absolutely.
finite. And so I can choose, is this worth my time or not? Now, when I went into the pandemic, I went from a weekly thing to a bi-weekly thing monthly. And the workflow was so much easier. Now, I do have that bite me in the ass sometimes because I'll record 6 episodes. And if you're doing it bi-weekly, that's 12 weeks. So that's 3 months already knocked out, which sounds good. But then you realize like the time stamp of everything, and like you're talking about something that happened 90 days ago.
Yeah,
And it's like, that kind of thing. Whereas like with our talk now, like this will come out October 15th. So right before wind up, which was on purpose, right? So you're welcome. I'm just kidding. No, but it's, yeah. So I don't know. I'm always like kind of intrigued with like how people, well, and especially from someone like yourself who had a podcast and no longer does. What was ending it like? Was it kind of like an emotional thing, or
Oh
were you
yeah.
cool to
Oh
end
yeah.
it, or?
I mean, we were cool to end it. I think we both cried like babies on the last episode just because it was something that meant a lot to the both of us. And I think we both had jobs that didn't prohibit us from recording it by any means, but just I traveled all the time, still do. Catlin travels. She's with Norcane now. She's going places, and we just couldn't time it right. And it was just like, this is just really a struggle. And I
Mhm.
think when you're like, I don't ever want to be in the position where like recording at midnight. Like that's not the life I
Right,
want, right? And
right.
so it was just too hard for us to try to make our schedules work anymore going forward. And as you know, it's a lot of work. You're doing social media posts and you're doing the back end editing and you're trying to still promote it in different ways. And it was just too much to try to do with our
Mhm.
full-time jobs. So we had to sadly hang up our hats. The podcast still lives on.
Yeah.
It will forever be out there. It's funny, we get messages still from people that are discovering it for the first time. And it's so odd to me, even having worked at Worn and Wound for like 2 years now, over 2 years, being at like a wind up fair and event, and people still come up to me and they're like, "Oh, you're Kat from 10 and 2." And it's really great. It means a lot to me that is like something that will just kind of live out there for a long
Yeah.
time. So it's
Yeah.
been really cool.
That's super cool. It's interesting. I think you had Cole Pennington on a couple times, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so jealous because I've always wanted to have him on, and
He's
he's
a
like
hard man to track down now.
yeah, well, and he's also like a friend of mine, right? So like when I was in Geneva last, like we went to dinner and hung out, and it's like that to me is almost better than having him on a podcast. Like I would much rather just maintain a friendship, of course. I love the guy sincerely. And but I've always like wanted to like share certain things about him because like when I'm talking to him as a friend, I wouldn't ask him these kinds of questions, right? Like
Yeah.
I didn't know you had brothers, and things like that, or a sister. And I'm not that I wouldn't ask you that in person, but what I'm saying is the type of interaction you and I have had, because I don't know, had countless conversations with you.
I know, but I
uh
always feel also when we see each other, it's always in the middle of an event and we're always like, go, go, go. People are,
exactly.
we don't ever really, honestly, I don't think we've ever had a chance to just sit down and like chat with each other.
Well, if you have questions for me, by all means, this can be a game of tennis. Let's play. Like I'm all good, which could be kind of fun. But yeah. So okay, so you guys ended. You guys were sad. She went to Norcane. You're with Worn and Wound, and it is what it is. It's just
Yeah,
scheduling was a nightmare.
scheduling was a nightmare. Yeah,
Got
it's
it.
tough. It's just tough to do both. And you know this, like having a full-time job and then running a
Hmm.
podcast is a full-time job. It's a lot
Yeah.
of work. It's a lot of
Hmm.
work that goes into it for sure.
Would you ever move to New York?
No. I love New York and I love all my work peeps. They are the best. I love going for like 2, 3 days at a time,
Hmm.
but I'm ready to get back here. I'm ready to get back to the quiet. Now I will say, if we ever opened a California branch, I'd love to I'd love to move out there.
Totally.
I know James, one of our co-founders, is in San Diego and first time visiting a few, I guess about a month ago or so, and then
Yeah.
we met
Yeah.
up at the James Brand. Gosh, it's so beautiful there. It's
Yeah.
amazing. So I could totally see myself being out on the West Coast, but um
I thought you were talking about James Helms at first.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, and
James,
he's Not James Brand, but
But
Oh,
both.
both.
oh,
Yeah.
oh, both. Yeah, both of the James. Both of the James.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
no, California's great. I love it. I could totally see myself out there at some point. But
Sure.
um yeah, we're putting down roots here in Nashville, and our family's here. And one of the blessings of my job is I do get to travel. So I get an East Coast, once a month. I get on the West Coast as much as possible,
Yeah.
and they get to send me all over. So it's really a good gig for getting that little bit of travel in
Yeah.
that I need.
So if you were to move hypothetically to California, would that be any sort of disruption for your husband? Like,
He works for the state of Tennessee. He's a civil engineer and
Okay.
he does bridge design here. So
Oh,
I'd
cool.
imagine if he could get a state job, or as long as there's bridges to be built, he's the guy. So
nice.
I could imagine he could find a job pretty easily.
That's super cool. Um, that's a different podcast asking bridge questions. That's all good. But is he still into watches, or is he still rocking the Seiko?
He rocks the Seiko quite a bit. He's got a couple of watches, but he's not a watch enthusiast by any means.
Interesting.
He respects my level of enthusiasm that I have, but he's a very practical guy. He's
Yeah.
very right-brained, and just, wouldn't ever, I think, spend more than probably $100 on himself buying a watch. So he's got a couple of stellar ones that I've given him over the years, but
Yeah.
yeah, he's a little too practical to spend money on watches, which is great because then I've got a little bit more budget on my side.
That's
So you,
we're just role reversed in my house, you
yeah,
know.
like
Really?
that's
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
100%.
100%.
So you have the pink Tudor on.
I am. I'm wearing that today. Yeah. Which
What
you got to see it when we were in California.
Yeah, I love it. What drew you to this watch?
So when this watch came out, I loved it immediately. It was pink and I thought it was cute, and I had just never really worn this Tudor chronograph before. And I knew it was big. I had some buddies that had bought them and sold them and were just like, it's just too bulky, it's too
Mhm.
thick. And I don't shy away from big watches. I really don't. If they're comfortable, that's all that matters to me. So
Yeah.
I reached out to Tudor and they sent me the white chronograph on loan on the
Mhm.
bracelet. And so I wore that for a couple of weeks. And my thought was like, yeah, it's kind of bulky. The bracelet is no micro, like quick adjust. But then I took it off. I put it on an Everest strap that I had here at the house from a previous purchase I had.
Okay.
Putting it on the Everest band changed. It was so comfortable. And
Really?
so I was like, well, I'm sure that the new 5 link wears incredibly better than the Oyster bracelet. And so I
Mm.
just kind of gambled. And then I just reached out, I called every AD that I knew, and I just was like, get me on the list. I want one. And yeah, got the call from Brinkers, who you're familiar with.
Yeah, that's my guy. Shout out Dean.
Shout out Dean. And yeah, Dean called me and he's like, I got one. And so I drove, it's like 3 hours away from me. So I drove up there and drove back
Sick.
and picked it up. But it's so comfortable on this 5 link bracelet. And it's a thick watch. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's thick. It's
Mhm.
crazy big. But I think the bracelet makes all the difference. The strap
Mhm.
that you put it on. It's great on the Everest rubber, and it's great on this 5 link bracelet that's got a micro adjust that's quick. Or I guess they call it the T-fit clasp,
Right.
technically, is what
Yeah,
Tudor
yeah.
calls it. And I don't feel it. I don't feel that it's heavy. I don't feel like it's uncomfortable. I still love the pink, and I got to go hands-on recently with the new blue one too, which is really nice.
Yeah, I just saw one in Charlotte last week.
What'd you think of it?
I loved it. And there's more of like what's the word? Almost like a metallic, sort of like a aluminum metal sort of vibe. Like it's not sunburst, but kind of. Like it's the blue, it almost feels like anodized in that sense. It's a brighter, shinier, streakier blue than I anticipated.
Yeah.
Like, which is not what the Pelagos is, right? Like a
Like a
No,
Pelagos is
Pelagos
very
no.
3.
flat, very almost plastic looking, whereas this looks more like metal.
Yeah, it
If that
looks more
makes
metal.
sense.
It definitely, it helps it, I think, feel a little more high end with the
Sure.
way the dial is. I would have thought it would be really cool to do a blue in this sort of flat, like how they did the pink with the kind of flat matte.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see that, but I understand sort of maybe the market they're sort of gearing these towards, and it
Hmm.
being I would say a boutique edition, kind of being a little bit more special in that way. But
Hmm.
I think they're both great. If you can get one, I'm telling people to get one. I think they're really cool watches.
Totally.
I've got my name forever down on the Daytona. Who knows when that day will come, but this will get me by. It scratches the itch for sure. Until I get that call one day, if ever.
So the Daytona spec, well, first of all, is that the Grail?
I wouldn't say grail, perhaps. I mean, in maybe a lot of ways, yeah, because it's just going to take me forever to get. I refuse to buy one on the gray market. Like,
Sure.
I just don't. I want to. If I want one, I just want to get it at retail. Like, I don't want to spend more than it's worth. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it'd probably be a grail in many ways, just because I've been waiting so long for it. No
So
pressure,
what's
Dean. Dean, if you're
Yeah,
listening to
yeah.
this.
Yeah. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Um, what's the spec? Black dial, Panda?
Yeah, black dial. Yeah.
Okay,
I
cool.
used to like the panda. I used to like the white and I don't know, I've had this weird shift over like the last year where I used to like all the polar stuff and now I'm really liking the black dial and just all black,
Interesting.
So same with like the Explorer 2. I used to really like the polar and now
Hmm.
I prefer the black on all the versions that they do. So the
So
16570 and even the newer ones.
what's funny with me in the Daytona is like the really old ones, the like 6263 or the 6239 or the 41. I'm usually a Panda fan. But I also like the black variants, a bit as well. Especially with the black bezel, not the silver bezel. I can't remember. Was that 6265 or something? Anyway, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Um, but then when you move into like the Zenith era, white dial for me, hands down.
Really
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
I love the white dial. And I think that's because of the first time I ever saw that watch. Like the first Daytona I ever like saw was like in 1999 or whatever, when I was at Banana Republic and a customer came in having just taken delivery of his Rolex. And this is like kind of not what got me into watches, of course. Like my grandfather, anyway, that's another story. But like this guy walked in and he told me he had been waiting to get this watch. Like, I guess it took like a few months or something. And I was like, wait, you
Yeah.
waited months to get a watch? Whatever. And it was the white dial Zenith Daytona. And I was just like, holy smokes, that is the coolest looking watch. And it was like really my foray into chronographs as well. Like,
Okay.
I'd always
Interesting.
been like a Timex Iron Man wearer. And then I had my Swiss Army watch, which was not a chronograph. And I'm not saying that was the first time I ever saw a chronograph, but it's the first time it ever was just like, oh my God, I think I love chronographs.
That's amazing. No, that's a
And
great story.
so, um, so that I've always said, like, if I were to ever get, a white dial Daytona, but then you fast forward to the whatever 2016 era, it was always black dial for me. But now with the thinner registers, I kind of leaning white dial again because it's sort of reminiscent of that Zenith style. So like I'm kind of a ping pong game back and forth.
I don't know. Yeah, I used to really like the white and now yeah, I like the all blacked out look and I think
Hmm.
I like the Zenith from I think like the 91, 92 era with the stainless bezel and then the black dial. I really really dig that one a lot. It's so
Cool.
cool. Yeah, but
Especially those that patina. Have you ever seen one with like some patina on it?
few, yeah, they're
Those are
great.
cool looking. Yeah,
They're so cool. And that's where I guess I would you have to buy gray market at this point if you're going to get one of those. But
sure.
it's on the watch recon list. It stays on there. I look at them every now and then just in case, but
Nice.
occasionally there's a deal. There's a deal to be had, especially if you're okay with maybe not having box and papers, especially. But
Hmm.
yeah, maybe one of these days I'll bite, but I feel like I'm just trying to hold out for that retail
Yeah.
the retail option.
It seems like Yasik from time to time has like a Zenith or four on hand
Yeah.
at any time. And like I think I was on his website yesterday, in fact, and I think it was $19,000 for White Dial Daytona Zenith, but it was only with I can't remember if it said papers only or hang tag only. And I
Yeah.
was like, but that's like significantly less money than they were 2 years ago,
They
you
have come
know?
down. Yeah, no, I think they have come down quite a bit,
Yeah.
for sure, which is good to see.
Same thing with like the 1680, like the red sub. Like that's like kind of my Grail Submariner.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think it used to be a 5513. Having owned one, I was like, I don't know, just like the red with the date on it. It's just so good. Timeless.
What's on your horizon right now? Like, what are you looking at? I was talking about me being on a list for something. Is there anything you've got your eye on?
Watches?
Yeah.
I got to be honest with you. There's kind of nothing that I want right now.
Is it cars? Has it shifted over to
Yes. Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I've been hunting a 997 911 for like a year
Ooh,
now. It was September last year I started hunting. I'm looking for a very specific spec. Haven't found it. Found one similar, but the guy seemed shady. So I was like, I'm not buying your car. And now my yard is the focus. Really? I mean, it's not even car. If like, somebody sent me a car this morning, actually, they were like,
Oh,
"Hey,
really?
dude, I found like a close spec." And though close, it was still like $30,000 more than I wanted to pay because of the spec. Like I'm looking for a C2S and this was a C4S with an aero kit and all this other stuff. And I was just like,
Yeah.
and then I'm looking out my window being like, I don't have any money for a car right now. Like I gotta, I gotta pour some concrete so I can have stairs to the front door, you
Concrete's
know?
expensive too.
No kidding. So, yeah, watch wise, I mean, I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, I hate to say that I'm just like kind of focused on grails going forward,
Yeah.
but like I love the idea of consolidating and like staring down like the idea of getting a grail or two, just having fewer things.
Yeah. I do too.
Having experienced so much of this over the last 15, 20 years, like
Hmm.
um yeah, there's nothing. I mean, honestly, like if I were offered a Daytona, not that I'm on any list, but it was
Yeah.
just like, yeah, like but again, it's like I don't have the cash right now for that. And like I'm still trying to grow Standard H and
Yeah.
it's just not financially responsible, I think, to be buying a watch at this moment in time or a car for that matter. So, just to be real, speaking of cars, what's your daily driver? What do you drive?
So my daily driver is just a Subaru Outback
Sweet.
2021 model. I got I don't know, the top of the line edition that it comes out with, but it's been a great vehicle for us. We've done some overlanding trips in it. We put a rooftop tent on it at one point, which was
Sweet.
fun. Since I've gotten rid of that, but I have recently I'm wanting to get back into the overlanding and camping and stuff. And so I'm actually thinking about getting a 4Runner. So that's sort
Sweet.
of like on the docket right now, a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Um, and we'll probably try to find a tent, like an SUV tent that kind of attaches to it rather than rooftop. So I don't know if you've ever done the rooftop tent thing, but for those that are interested, it's cool. Like it looks cool. It's awesome. Having to go pee in the middle of the night and go downstairs, like the ladder system sucks. And I did not enjoy that. And so I think like, especially if you've had anything to drink,
Right.
go up the ladder. So just think about that. I think a lot of people like them. They're cool. They set up in like seconds, basically.
Right.
But going forward, I think we'll sleep inside the back of the vehicle and then sort of have a camp build out. You can buy like these awnings that you can attach to the side too. But
Sure.
yeah, that's sort of something I'm wanting to get into probably here the next few months. Weather's cooling down here in the south, and
Mm-hmm.
winter is like a great time to camp here. It's just we don't have really harsh winters, so it's a nice time to get out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been looking at 4Runners, and there's a ton of options. So I'm just trying to narrow down like what I like, trim
Yeah.
level, all that kind of stuff right now.
What's the spec? What color?
I really like all blacked out version
Okay.
of it.
Match your
There's
Daytona.
like what's the TRD, I think TRX, TRD. I think
TRD, yeah.
TRD is their sort of trim level that I like, but um, yeah, it's the Daytona spec, right, with the all black. I haven't seen a lot of colors. There's this kind of slate gray that you can find occasionally that they've
Mm-hmm.
done. That's kind of a cool color, but yeah, I'd probably go all black, honestly. I think would
Nice.
be pretty sleek.
Yeah.
But I think the Outback will stay in the family. I think my husband is going to adopt to adopt the Outback. He has a Chevy truck right now and a little Mazda that he uses to get around town. But because he has quite a drive to downtown Nashville. But
Okay, so you're on the outskirts, I guess.
we're like 50 minutes from proper downtown Nashville, where
Cool.
we are. So kind of in the boonies a little bit. But yeah, maybe a Forerunner. I was kicking the idea, and some of our podcast listeners heard me say this, of getting a little Mercedes convertible at one point, just for like a little fun weekend car.
Nice.
Yeah, there's a dealer close by that sells all these European cars, and they're so clean and they're low miles, and he's had a couple SLs coming in and out there that look so good. And I don't know anything about Mercedes, so I'm just it just would have to be something I kind of do some research into.
Yeah.
Love to have a little Mercedes convertible to drive around on the weekends with.
My understanding is that the older Mercedes, if you're talking, 20, 30 years old, as long as they've been maintained well, you'll get, 250,000 miles out of them. When things go wrong, they go wrong.
I know, I know.
If that guy's reliable, let me know if he's got 911s coming through.
No, he does. He does, dude. He has, and I have several friends here in Nashville that have bought Porsches from him, and he's great.
Sweet.
I'll have to send you his info.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Mercedes will happen. Or, yeah, I'm looking at like late 80s, but it's just
Yeah.
something I need to do a lot of research and kind of. I've got a fixer upper in my garage right now below me. So my dad passed away unfortunately last year, but
Oh
I
no.
inherited his 55 Plymouth Plaza. So this looks, if you're familiar with like a Chevy Bel Air, very similar body style,
Yeah.
but by Plymouth. And my dad spent a lot of years restoring it, but it still needs a lot of work. It's
Okay.
running, but it's not the car for me. I learned how to drive it. It's like a three on the tree is what they call it.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's tough. It's scary. I
Wow.
don't like being on the road. There's no turn signal or anything like that on it. So you just gotta you have to stick your hand out the window and do the manual signs and everything.
No way. That's crazy. I mean, it's 70 years old now.
Yeah, it's crazy. He built it up over the years, and it's a great looking car, and I want someone to enjoy it and that's going to drive it. But it's unfortunately it's just not the car for me.
Right, right,
And it needs someone that kind of knows what they're doing, because it needs sort of work all the time to kind of keep it up and running.
right.
Yeah.
Kat, this was fun. Do you have any questions for me?
I have so many questions for you, but I know we're we're topping out. I maybe a good refresher for even like your listeners, or maybe new listeners, but like I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of curious, like where Standard H is going, like where do you see the brand in like the next few years? Because you've grown exponentially since I first met you and we first started talking, and like I love your brand. First of all, I will say, like, I own many of the what is it,
The XK.
the XK sweaters. Yeah, it's one of my favorite
Yeah.
sweaters. I can't wait till it's like cold enough to start putting those back on.
Yeah. I just got a new. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. It has grown. But again, it comes down to kind of affordability. Like when we first met, it was like I was producing X number of SKUs, and now it's just kind of slowly grown because I never had the money to do a full collection at once. And so I've just been slowly building the collection little by little, and then having all these things sort of on offer. And then, of course, the rotation of colors. And so that's just kind of been the way things have unfolded. As far as where it's going, I'm developing a polo currently.
Ooh, nice.
Excited about that. I almost nailed it in the first try, but sometimes that just doesn't happen, does it? So there's that. I've got a trench coat that's on pre-order right now only, just due to the cost of manufacturing that item specifically is just crazy high. So I guess brass tacks, where is it going in the future? Just continually building out the collection, really honing in the colors, so that I don't have so many SKUs. Um, and then, well, I don't know. I guess if you consider a SKU a different color versus just the style itself, I don't know. I guess it's up for debate. But yeah, I mean, eventually, I mean, I've had a retail concept in my brain longer than I've had a brand. And so my initial thing, which I don't know that I've ever said this out loud. Maybe I have. I can't remember. Um, I had a store concept in like 2012, and like it was going to be a multi-brand boutique. basically the desire then was to bring in the brands I loved most that did what they did best. So at the time, it was like a more of a surf, like when Standard H first launched, it was really about me upfitting a Volkswagen Vanagon and making it a mobile store so that when I go surf, I could sling t-shirts in the parking lot.
Cool.
And that would have been great, but the Vanagon prices took off like 3 months before I launched.
Jeez.
So they went from $16,000 to about 50 grand in like a 6 month period or something. I mean, it was just like this fervor to buy these things. And so that never happened. And those things are still 38 to 50 grand. Plus I'd need to upfit it. So here we are again at the money discussion, you know? So, and same thing with the retail thing. Like I can't afford to do a retail store now.
Yeah.
I think eventually I might just have to seek out funding and or a business partner
Yeah.
to join me financially to start doing and making some of these like bigger moves. But it was like, again, at the time, it was I would bring in my favorite wetsuit brand. I would retail wetsuits. I'd retail surfboards. I have a lot of friends who are actual shapers. So like I could carry their boards and my favorite wetsuit alongside my apparel. And
Yeah.
then like, you know, partner up with, was it Phaidon or somebody for books? And like, I
Yeah.
wanted to upfit the space very much like a home. And, and who knows, maybe I'll still do that one day. It's location, you know, finding the right place. I have another idea too, since I've gone more the watch and automotive, but I'll keep that to myself for the time being. So I'm not giving away the farm, but it's, yeah. So, I mean, the ideas are aplenty. I've got no desire to slow down per se. But it is a money thing, right? And like, I recorded a pit stop this week and it was like something I brought up just if I could find 20 hours a week, which I think I can, is like maybe I just go work for an interior design firm just as like just to earn some more money, right? So that I can continue to do the things that I want to do.
Yeah.
It could pay for my 911. Who knows? Like, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of like one of those things. And it's not like, how much more stuff can I own? It's just like, this is my dream, you know?
You
And
gotta make it make
so,
sense. Yeah.
right. And to be financially responsible and still be able to like put money away for retirement and
Yeah, absolutely.
all the rest of that stuff. So,
Yeah, look, I don't think there's any shame in that. I've certainly, to help justify purchases in the past with watches and stuff, I've taken on jobs from friends on the weekends shooting weddings and couple
sure.
photos just to, again, so that I'm not pulling from my safety net of our bank account and things like that, so that
Yeah.
I can still get to have the fun stuff, but I work my ass off, and I know you do too, to make those things work, you know.
Yeah. And I've shot photos for friends too. Like, I've actually just recently been approached by two different restaurants about coming in to shoot at the restaurant. And I
That's
was
great.
like, sure, I'll come do that. Like that sounds like a blast. I love taking
That's awesome.
photos. So, I mean, if anybody's listening and wants me to come shoot photos, like I'd be more than happy to do that. You know, let's just find the time to do it, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's a slow it's a crawl situation still, you know, or I guess I'm kind of walking now. I'm not running yet, but I'm not crawling either. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's exciting. I mean, there's always something to do. I'm never bored. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
Well, I love the brand. I love what you're doing. And I think and
Thank
for those
you.
listening too that are maybe even women or you have ladies in your life, Standard H clothing works for both genders. It's
It does.
sweaters fit
Yeah.
great. Yeah. So,
And thank you for
don't
saying
shy
that.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've one of my Targa Florio jackets. This is kind of a funny story. I did this like pop-up event, which I don't remember if you were there. Were you there at with the collective? Didn't you come to
No,
one
no,
of
no. I
those?
wasn't there. No.
Okay, I thought you were there. Anyway, they did this pop-up event a couple years ago, or maybe it was last year, February, so a year and a half ago in LA. And a friend of mine who actually works for FP Journe in LA. She came in and bought one of my Targa Florio jackets. And I took a photo of her and I was like, oh my God, I got to post this so people know. I posted that and my wife was like, who is that? And I was like, it's a customer of mine. She goes, well, I want that jacket. So now my wife, who doesn't even think to wear my own clothing, is like asking to wear my jackets because this woman bought a jacket from me.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
I was like, it's been in the closet this whole time. Like, you could have gotten it anytime you want.
That's great. Well, I hope that I know we've talked about a Nashville meetup at some point. I hope we can make it happen in the near future.
100%.
We got a huge Porsche club down here, huge watch collectors, and yeah, I think it'd be a great little meetup to have. So let me know when you want to come to town. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, I think, if we could do it like in the spring, I think the winter might be kind of tough with the weather, but let's try to do it, I don't know, like March or something. And
yeah, for sure.
You've got Cameron Weiss is there now.
I know, yeah.
Brett Curry's there.
Yeah.
Are you tight with Brett?
No, I've never met Brett.
No way. Come on.
I'm inching to meet him. I've been a fan for so long and have followed him on Instagram for years. Absolutely love the work that he does. Yeah, I'd love to meet him at some point. And I know he's back and forth between LA and Nashville quite a bit, but yeah, I'd love to meet him. And yeah, Cameron's here. He's doing some great stuff. Just came out with a limited edition with the Imogene and Willie here in Nashville. But yeah, there's some happening things here in a little town. Yeah.
Oh man, I can't wait. And I've got some very, very good friends that just moved from LA as well. Like right around the same time Brett did. They moved from LA to Nashville because they're North Carolina folks I've known forever. And so they're closer to family now and stuff because they have kids. And I think they're in Franklin, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, not too far.
Okay, cool.
Beautiful.
Kat, thank you. I shall see you in, I don't know, like 3 weeks, I guess.
Yeah, we'll be at Wind Up New York. Watch Week is happening. So
that's right. Yeah,
if you're listening and you like watches, that's the place to be.
Yep. I will be there the 17th through the 21st. So 2 days after this launches, I hope to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to hang out.
Thanks, Kat.
Of course.
All right, see you soon.
All right, bye.
This wraps up this episode of the Standard Age podcast. If you like what you heard, I'd love it if you'd share it with a friend or two. And if you have a moment, please rate and review the show as it helps others discover these episodes. It absolutely helps far more than you realize. Shout out to Jensen Reed and Super Beautiful for the theme track. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.